Welcome to the No Limit Selling Podcast, where industry leaders share their advice on how you can become better, stronger, faster. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the No Limit Selling Podcast. And today I am really super excited because we have the world's fastest hypnotist, and he is so good that, hold on, I'm not sure why I want to give this to you, Sean, but I'm not sure what you're doing. Don't look into his eyes, whatever you do. No, Sean was actually my teacher as well, because my background, as you may know, is neuro-linguistic programming, and they have a certain Ericksonian hypnosis, which is long and arduous. And I thought, there's got to be a better way. And certainly the language patterns of Milton are great, but the speed of induction, Sean was doing phenomenal work. And it was like a game changer for me and my career. Sean, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Umar. Very happy to be here.
So I think the first question to ask really is, what's your definition of hypnosis?
Oh, boy. Okay, my definition of hypnosis is very simple. And it's basically a usually relaxed state that when human beings enter it, they are more accepting of suggestions that would be good for them. So that's my very basic definition of hypnosis. Now there are many different ways that there are different theories about hypnosis. You have the state theory and the non-state theory and the transactional theory, and then those all get very deep. But basically, a hypnotist hypnotizes you, puts you in a trance state, and in that trance state, you are more willing to accept suggestions that will be good for you. And so then you can make changes in your life. So that's kind of my simple explanation of hypnosis.
Which is a good definition. And so I'll give you my definition from a lay person's point of view, and then we'll kind of dig into what you said.
Sure.
There is a state of awareness, and there's another state going on underneath that we're unaware of. And what hypnosis to me is quietening that aware mind for a little while. So it's still there, but it quietens it down so you can access more of those deeper places. And so your thoughts on my definition, because it's similar to yours, but it's
well, your definition kind of reminds me of self-hypnosis, which is a very useful thing, right? So what I've used it for is I'll put myself into self-hypnosis, and it kind of quiets the conscious mind. And when I go into this trance, I go in with the thought of, I'm going to come up with 3 ideas for marketing my business or something like that. And then you go into hypnosis for however long you've decided to go. And when you come out, when you opened your eyes, you can have some pretty cool ideas. Now, some of them are going to be pretty wacky, but
they should be wacky, because
that can be good.
Wacky ideas equals one game-changing idea. And if you try and stay in your lane and have sensible ideas, then you'll probably wait a long time for a good one.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So going back to your definition, you were very particular in your articulation of it, and it was like you're susceptible to positive suggestions that are good for you. And A, how would you know that they're positive? And B, how would you know they're good for you? And when someone's in that state, how can they filter through those? Because my thought would be that they're open to suggestions, and if there's one that's super negative, they're going to basically say, I don't want to do that.
Right.
But do they have a sense of this is good for me? So go deeper into that, please.
Yeah, well, they certainly do. And if their suggestion violated one of their core values, it would just be automatically rejected. And generally, before we do the session, we've talked through exactly what suggestions the client would like to receive. And so we don't surprise them during the session. We give them suggestions that they've already agreed, yes, that would be a good idea. And it just works so much better in hypnosis. I mean, I can talk to somebody all day about the importance of drinking plenty of water, and they agree with me wholeheartedly, but they don't do it. But when they're in that trance and I suggest that water is really good and they like it, and it just, quenches their thirst and it cleanses their body, sounds like a very good idea, just because they're open to suggestions, more open to suggestions when they're in trance.
So you said something really important, which was that conversation before we go into the session of therapy or hypnosis, that we have a good conversation about what they want to accomplish and what might be good. And so you get closer to what they want, because my experience has been is oftentimes people have a sense of what they want.
Mm-hmm.
When you have that conversation, Sean, with them, is you help them realize that's not what I want. This is what I want. And that conversation creates clarity for them. And of course, you as a practitioner, it really helps you out because you know exactly what needs doing.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes the thing that they actually want comes out during the session. It's just they have this epiphany during the session that this is the way I'm going to do it. And you can force that too. You can tell them, well, I'm going to give you, I don't know, I'm going to give you 30 seconds of silence. And during that period of time, I want you to let your subconscious mind wander and come up with some unique ways that you might also, do some things that would help you achieve your goal. And then let them go for a while, and they can come up with some really good ideas.
So let's talk about time. You could have a kid who's 14 and it's a month away from summer break. That month can seem an awfully long time.
Yeah.
And so your best guess for the average person, or you could think of someone specifically that you worked with, that if you were talking to them in just a regular conversation and you said, take 30 seconds to think about this, and then you had them in trance, and then you asked them to think for 30 seconds, do you think their perception of that 30 seconds in trance is different than what it would have been if they were just having a conversation? Like, is there any time distortion or not?
Right. Interesting question. There is often time distortion. And this you probably heard me say this before. Sometimes hypnotists will use time distortion to prove to the client that he or she was in hypnosis. And they'll finish the session and they'll have them open their eyes and say, well, how long do you think you were in hypnosis? And often they will underestimate the time that
Radically.
That is right. And they'll say, oh, I don't know, 15 minutes. And then you point to the clock and say, no, it was actually 40 minutes. And that shows that you were in trance because there's this normal time distortion. And that's the time distortion that you see with most clients. However, some of them, you ask them how long they've been in trance, and they say, oh, I think I've been in trance about 2 hours. And then you say, well, no, look at the clock, and you see that it was only 40 minutes. So this is the time distortion. So they'll play this however they want, just to try and show them. Then if they say, how long do you think you were in trance? And the client says 41 minutes. They'll look at the clock and go, you know what? That proves you were in trance because you were in exactly 41 minutes. And people in hypnosis have excellent timing. It's funny. Now, as you know, I have different ways to prove to the client that they were in trance. But let's get back to the 30 seconds. Often, when they come out of trance, you tell them 30 seconds. If you told them the signal when they feel they're at 30 seconds, often they can be very, very accurate. And we also teach that when we teach them how to do self-hypnosis. We have them practice going into trance for 30 seconds and then coming out. And it's funny. Sometimes they are very, very close to the 30 seconds that you tell them to go for.
Nice. We're going to take a break for a sponsor. We'll be right back.
All right.
If you're ready to let go of anxiety, let go of uncertainty, let go of doubt, Mindset Boosters gives you the ability to decide how you act and feel in any situation. Ready to take charge of your mindset? Go to mindsetboosters.com. So our mindset and how we perceive the world often becomes reality. And if we're looking the world's out to get us, we're going to find people and situations that sometimes are perfectly benign, but the way we see them, it looks like absolutely 100%. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
Why do you think that happens?
I mean, I know it does happen. It's interesting you mentioned that because I read a study just yesterday. I don't know when they did the study, but what they did was they took a bunch of youngsters, college students. It's all about college sophomores, right? So
Mm.
anyway, and what they did was they had a makeup artist put a scar on their face.
Oh yeah,
And
very
then
nice.
you heard about this one? And then
Yeah,
they
yeah.
sent them off to job interviews. The thing was that right before they went to the job interview, they said, let me touch that up a little bit more. And they got rid of the scar. But these students went to the job interview thinking they had this horrible scar on their face. And when they came back, they interviewed them and they had a litany of how this person didn't take them seriously because they had this horrible scar on their face, because they were looking for it. They were looking for a bad reaction, and they saw bad reactions. So yeah, I mean, your mindset, if you expect that you're going to do well, if you expect that you're going to be successful, I mean, I think everyone would agree that you are going to be far more successful than if you go out into the world thinking you're going to fail. I mean, that seems like a sure way to fail.
Yeah, definitely. And like you can have people that have a negative attitude that can be
Mm-hmm.
highly successful.
Mm,
And you can have people that have a positive mindset and they just live perhaps happier lives, but maybe not as successful as they want to be. Because there is at least to me, it looks like there's a disconnection between two. Society uh, tells us positive
mhm.
mindset equals a happier, more successful life.
Right.
And but I think there's lots of. Well, I'll give you a good example. A good example is you hear a lot of these Hollywood actors
Hmm.
that are highly successful, make lots of money, have a great
Right.
track record, and they are convinced they'll never work again after this movie. I'll never get hired again. And it's like, are you crazy? You're like this famous person that's got a track record. So even though they've got that fragile mindset, they're still successful. Kind of thoughts on that,
Yeah.
Sean?
Well, I don't know. I guess we've all had failures, right?
Hmm.
And you come up against this failure, and now I may be speaking just for myself, but
Hmm.
yeah, I've had, I can't think of anything in particular, but I've had failures, and I thought, oh, that's it, that's it for me. I guess I'm going to have to find something else to do, and but I was wrong, geez, I don't know. I mean, when I meet negative people, now that's I don't consider that to be a negative person. I think that's just somebody who
I
something
agree.
happened and they go, oh, I'm finished, and they're not. So yeah, because I do see negative people. I've encountered negative people who were truly negative and
Hmm.
only saw the bad, and I don't remember them as being particularly successful. I mean, positive. You can have a positive person and a negative person be involved in the same situation, and of course, they're both going to come away from it with a different point of view. As to was it a good thing, was it a bad thing? But I don't know. I'm
So
trying to.
let me throw another data point out there and kind of get your
Yeah,
thoughts
yeah,
on it. Let's
yeah.
see, you've got two people with we've got this magical test, and we go, okay, these two people have a positive attitude in life,
Mm-hmm,
and they have a failure that happens, and
mm-hmm.
one person sees that failure and label it a certain way, make meaning out of that failure,
Right, right.
and the other person makes a different meaning out of it. It's like that Sean guy said, you failed, I'm going to show him, and
Mm-hmm.
just go out and set the world on fire. And the other
Yeah,
person could go, maybe I'll do something else. Maybe this isn't right for me.
right,
Like both the
right.
positive, not beating themselves up. So maybe that's the articulation. A positive.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, and of course, I have seen those people that come up against failure and say, well, I'll show them. I will. It sort of galvanizes them and makes them drive forward even harder. And yeah, good for them. And yes, they do tend to be more successful. Um, yeah. It's interesting. And then the person says, oh well, I guess that's it for me. Now if it's they truly believe that is it, because even when I say that, I know it's not, but I'll say it, that's it for me. But then after a couple of days of licking your wounds, you go, well, all right, well, what can I do to fix this? And then go on. Yeah.
Or it could be,
So
hey, I'm not meant to be an opera singer. I'm
mm-hmm.
going to go open up a rock and roll band. And it's like a positive mindset would allow people to go, not this, I'm going to try something else. And they just off they go. Truly someone that's down on themselves,
mm-hmm.
then basically spiral down.
Mm.
So let's kind of move on to, well, this is, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, some people are more susceptible to hypnosis than others.
Right.
Is there a way to understand why that happens? Like, why are some people more susceptible and other people just are more open to that or susceptible to it?
Okay, well, I've done a lot of research on this, and the reason why is because when I'm out, giving a demonstration or a performance, I don't want to fail. I don't like to fail. So I've done a lot of research into what makes people more highly hypnotizable. And some of the things I found are that the women tend to be more highly hypnotizable than men, not by a lot, but a little bit. And I back up a little bit. Most research will suggest that 20% of the population are good, deep hypnotic subjects. 20%. The rest of us, the other 80% is just, they fall somewhere. Some are okay, some are not so okay, but 20% are really, really good hypnotic subjects. So, so things I look for: women slightly better than men. Ethnicity comes into it. People with their heritage from the Indian subcontinent, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, tend to be more highly hypnotizable than Northern Europeans. And it doesn't mean that Northern Europeans aren't good, because some of them are really wonderful. But in general, and I don't know if this is genetic or if it's cultural, but for whatever reason, people from that region of the world tend to be more highly hypnotizable than Northern Europeans. The younger they are, the more highly hypnotizable they are. So I think most researchers agree that the most hypnotizable age is about 12, like right before puberty.
Interesting.
Now, but if you're a good subject at 12, when you're 82, you're still going to be a pretty good subject, but maybe not as good as you were when you were 12. Country people are more highly hypnotizable than city people. City people tend to be a little bit more cynical, a little bit more cautious. And so the country people tend to be better. What else? If someone has an interest in new age type stuff,
yes,
they tend to be more highly hypnotizable than someone
predisposed to it. Yeah.
So it's anyway. So there are things that make people more highly hypnotizable, but at the end of the day, 20% are going to be really great, and the rest of them are going to fall somewhere in the gray area.
So typically there's a bell curve, and is there another 20% or 2% at the other end that are absolutely really difficult to go into a trance?
Yeah, that's true. It's
what percentage would you say that would be?
I would say, and I'm not sure because I've concentrated on the highs rather than the lows, but I would say it's probably about 5 or 10% that are extremely difficult to hypnotize if you can do it at all.
So here's my hypothesis on what you just said a little while ago, based in neuroscience. People that are new agey people and people from India, Pakistan, those kinds of areas, meditation of some form is just part of their day-to-day activity. And it just perhaps that's what allows them to be more open to it or more susceptible, is because they kind of just like do that kind of stuff anyway. It's not a foreign thing for them to be in that state. Of course, it's not. And for women versus men, generally, I find women tend to be more open than men. Men tend to be more guarded, and maybe there's that. But
yes, women score a lot higher in agreeableness. Yeah, and that certainly plays into it.
So here's one I'm not sure there's any science to it or any makes even sense asking the question. I wonder if there's a correlation between attractiveness and susceptibility.
Mhm.
Because attractiveness would give, one would think, have an impact on self-confidence.
Mhm.
And if I'm not sure if they're related in this, or it's just doesn't make a difference.
Interesting. And this is attractiveness of the subject, not the attractiveness of the hypnotist.
Otherwise, I'd be awesome.
Oh my God. So I don't know. I've never looked. Well, okay. This is kind of funny because one of the things when I'm doing a demonstration to encourage people to play, I'll say things like, the more intelligent someone is, generally the more highly hypnotizable they are. That's actually a lie.
Yeah.
It's not true. There is no
It's
correlation.
a useful lie.
It's a useful lie, right? But I have on a couple of occasions, just for fun, said, and I find that the more attractive people do go into trance so much easier.
Is that your dating strategy? I love it.
No. I've been
married for a long time. I know
38 years. but I have said that just for fun, and but no, I'm not aware of any studies on attractiveness of the subject. And well, it might make the hypnotist want to do their best with an attractive person, but I haven't read anything on that.
So here's the thing. One of the things that, when I was in your class, you talked about is hypnosis is a cooperation between the hypnotist and the subject.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no better demonstration. At least this is the way I saw it, but
Mm-hmm.
I'd like a better explanation for it. Mm-hmm. So if I have a really, what was the name of the script that you gave?
The Dave Ellman induction.
I can be on stage in front of a class and say, could I have a volunteer, please? There's 20 people in the audience and a volunteer comes up and I read that script as written and that subject goes into a trance. And for me, nobody in the audience goes into trance. They're just fascinated in what's going on.
Right.
Then I can have the subject go back into the group and say, okay, now I'm going to hypnotize all of you. And I read the exact same script. So they're hearing the same thing and all of them will go into trance. So what filter gets in the way between, because when I'm doing it to somebody next to me, the other 19 people are hearing the same thing and not going into trance. Like what mechanism comes in that stops them? And when I pay my attention to them and say, now I'm going to do it to you, and they all go under.
Okay. A couple things are going on there. First of all, they had no expectation in the group that they were going in. They were there to watch you hypnotize that one person. So since they didn't have that intention or that expectation, that's why they didn't go into trance. However, if you had said, if anybody wants to play along, you probably would have dropped a couple of them in the group.
Yeah.
But then also what you had going for you is after you hypnotized the one person in front of them, then they had the social proof. And they go, oh, this is what happens. This is what I'm going to, they knew.
This is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why you had success with the group, better success with the group probably than you would have had if you hadn't done the example for it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that makes sense.
And it kind of goes back to that. So people have this fear that, I'll be minding my own business and Sean's going to get me to send him $20 without my knowledge. And the answer is no, it's a cooperation. And that's kind of an interesting thing to watch happen. So here's a question I've been wondering about for a long time. I probably got the name of it incorrect, but it's you put somebody into a trance, and as they're going into a trance and they're there, then you say, Sean, wake up for a second. I want to tell you something. Fractionization or something?
Fraction. Oh my goodness.
Because I said it wrong. Now I screwed you up. I'm sorry.
It's fractionation.
Fractionation. And then they come out of the trance and I go, oh, that's okay. Now I want you to take a deep breath and go under, and they go down deeper. Why does that cause a deepening to take somebody out of trance? They're in that disoriented space and then you drop them down. They seem to go deeper. Why does that happen?
I don't think I know why it happens. I mean,
but you observed it, right?
Yeah. Hippolyte Bernheim back in the 1800s wrote about it in Suggestive Therapeutics. And he wrote that when he saw a patient, they might go into a light trance. And then the next week when he saw them, they go in deeper, and the next week deeper. And that was what Dave Ellman's induction was based on. You know, you got Ellman going, okay, so every week they go deeper. What if you had them in every day? Or what if you had them in every hour? Or what if you just did it several times in a row? Would the same thing happen? And the same fractionation does happen. People who have been hypnotized before are easier to hypnotize. And but when you bring somebody out and put them back in again, they do tend to go down deeper and deeper and deeper every time that you do it. But why that works, that's a good question. I've never thought about that. Why it works. It just does work.
So here's my theory on it. You've noticed I'm full of theories. But, in the induction you showed us in the instant hypnosis, we get somebody to stand with their feet together, so it's not the most balanced stance.
Right.
And then you go to shake their hands, and then as you go to shake, you give them a slight pull, and they're about to fall, and they go not into the fight or flight, but go into the freeze response for a moment. And in that freeze response, if you give them a command to go to sleep, that they take that command and go.
Yes.
And I think when they're in trance, and rather than I'm going to count to 3, Sean, and you're going to feel fantastic, rather than bring them up slowly,
right,
I go, Sean, wake up for a second. And you snap out that you're almost in that fight or flight freeze response. And then you're more open to the suggestion, since you were already in a relaxed state, and now I've got you in an open state, that just lets you fall deeper into it. And it's the similar concept.
Okay. All right. That's an interesting idea. Now, you know that you don't have to like, hey, Sean, wake up. You don't have to do that. You can just have them.
It's so much fun. What's a better way?
Right. Bring them up. Yeah, right. But, you know, it's interesting because that's something that I do not do. I do not generally bring them. There's only one case when I ever bring somebody out of trance quickly, and that's when I'm doing the headache cure. But in general, I don't bring them out quickly. But you're right. It would engage the human stress response. And then if you put them back in after another shock and do it a couple of times after shocks, could you get a deeper trance? It's an interesting idea. I haven't done it, but it's an interesting idea. I might have to try that.
We'll compare notes.
Yeah.
So why don't you walk us through the levels of hypnosis? Like the first one is the weakest muscle in the body are the eyelids, and if you hold the relaxation, they're not going to open, and they lose control of it if they choose to cooperate. So the weak muscles, then where does it go from there? Like, what are the next levels going down?
Okay, well, there are several different scales. The one you're talking about is, I think the one you're talking about is the Aaron scale, and it goes from 1 to 6, with 1 being the lightest trance and 6 being the deepest trance. So the first one is catalepsy of a group of small muscles, like we test with the eyelids. And the second is catalepsy of a larger group of muscles, in which case we either tell them to make the arm nice and loose and limp so that you can drop it, or we'll tell them to make the arm stiff and rigid, so stiff it won't bend, right? And if they pass that, that's Aaron's 2. Aaron's 3 can be demonstrated by, I generally stick people to something, stick their hand to the side of their face or stick their hand to the chair, or you can do aphasia. You can take away a name or a number and you say, what's your name? And they'll go, they got it. It's in here, but they can't make their mouth say it. So that's Aaron's 3. Aaron's 4 is amnesia, where you have them forget something like their name or a number, and it is gone. It just doesn't exist now. 1, 2, 4, 5, it's so that's amnesia, or Aaron's 4. Aaron's 5 is generally a positive hallucination. You
see something that does not exist.
They see something. They can see something that isn't there. Yeah. And then Aaron's 6, which is negative hallucination, is when you have something that is there can disappear. For instance, the hypnotist can disappear and they will not see you. Okay, so that's the Aaron scale.
So,
But of course, there's the Stanford scale. There are many different scales, and some of them have like 35 different levels.
so on the Aaron scale, the number 5, making something appear, only did it once, and it wasn't me. It was the subject was like so susceptible that it was like, oh my God, this works. It's like amazing. So getting someone to forget their name, what's the articulation? You've got them in trance. What is the articulation that you use to suggest that?
Okay. Well, what I generally do is I'll ask them if it would be appropriate. I'll say, would it be interesting if for just a few moments I could get you to forget your name? And almost always they'll say, yeah, sure, for a few moments. And then I'll go through, but I always ask because some people, they do not want to lose their name. It would, it's
That's
just
their identity.
It's nothing that they really want to do. So then I'll say, how about if you could lose a number? Would that be okay? And if they agree to that, then fine. Or then if they don't agree to that, then maybe if I could make you forget what day of the week it is or something like that. Anyway, generally you'll find something that they don't mind experimenting with. Now, if they don't want to lose their name, could you still make them lose their name? You might be able to, but it's certainly it's certainly going to be harder. So get their permission. And I say, okay, this is the way it's going to work. In a moment, I'm going to have you open your eyes and look at me, and I will snap my fingers. And when I do, your name will just disappear. Just want that to happen, expect it to happen, and watch it happen. Open your eyes, look at me, and try to speak your name and find that you can't. And you'll see it. They get a funny look on their face when they cannot remember their name. You say, do you remember my name? They'll say my name. I say, and your name is? No, it's just completely gone. And it's kind of cool. But yeah, I always ask them if they think it would be interesting to do that, because if they don't, then I'm going to go for something else.
So let's break that down a little bit, because I find language is so fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
And so taken for granted. Just like your articulation of that, like, would it be okay? Would it be interesting for you to lose your name for the next 5 minutes? In order to comprehend what you just asked them to do, they have to envision it in the internal movie theater and see the possibility of it. So you're almost actually leading them down that path and setting up a roadway for that to happen just by how you're doing that. And the presupposition at the end, like, my name and you won't know yours, but it's going to be okay. And just, and just notice it happen. Notice it happen is also implanting the possibility. And it's just, once you master it, like you probably do it without even thinking about the mastery of what you're doing, it just happens naturally. But to the person receiving it, it's just like life-changing. It's like, wow.
Well, it's kind of interesting. If you can make somebody forget their name, what else could you do? You certainly ought to be able to help them stop smoking, right? If you can take away their name.
So I had a client come in. It's a guy that runs a company. They've got about 700 employees, and it's that's it. The board isn't supporting me. I'm just going to put in my resignation, go do something else where I'm appreciated. I said, okay, well, can we go explore that? And I put this gentleman in a trance with his happy cooperation. And when he's in trance, it's like, I have no idea how many board members are troublesome. There's 3 board members that just aren't getting or not wanting to get what you want to do. Get the first person, have them sit in the chair in front of you and have a conversation and figure out what's the issue that's really going on. And when you have it, just lift up your finger. And sure enough, in about a minute and a half, they lift up their finger. I got it. Let's get the second board member in and the third. And as this person comes out of trance, and it's like, so how's the session? He goes, oh my God, it was my fault. What I need to do with number 1 is this, and number 2 needs this, number 3 needs this. And the very next day was the board meeting, hence our session. And he won the board over to his new initiative he wasn't able to do. And it comes back to we have the answers within us, and it's our ruminations or our conscious mind oftentimes gets in the way. Our intellect gets in the way of us discovering the answer. And one of the things hypnosis can do is make all that noise go away. And it's like, you've got them here and you can figure out what the issue is. And sure enough, they kind of go in and go, oh, it's this, this, and this.
Interesting.
And so here's the question I'm leading up to. Have you ever seen that movie Limitless?
No.
Bradley Cooper.
No.
One, put it on your list. If you like watching movies, this is a good one. And I'll kind of describe the plot. It's a down on his luck author who hasn't written anything in 2 years. And he smells and he's just, girlfriend's left him. And he meets this drug dealer that gives him this new age drug that you're only using 10% of your mind. This opens up another 90%. And basically for him, he can write the entire book in an evening kind of thing. And so one, that's a good date night movie to watch. But here's the question to you is, if you have someone that has, they want to be really successful, but internally at a deep level, I can't be more successful than my father, because that would be disrespecting him. Sure. So if we were able to go in with NLP or hypnosis and change that, it would get them unstuck and it would open up their ability to do stuff.
Sure.
So is there a way, let me take one step back so I can ask it more effectively, that if I was in a Taekwondo clinic and I could go, here are the 7 mistakes most people make in Taekwondo when they've got a black belt, like they've passed the test, but they kind of suck at it. But if I show them this few techniques to kind of get the right attitude, they're going to be like phenomenal at it. And we can kind of quantify that. And that's a really good formula that works. Does that make sense before I ask the question I'm about to ask?
I think it makes sense, yeah.
Is there something that we can help general human beings with hypnosis to come to terms with them as human beings that would allow them to just open up? So it's something more generalized, so not more workshop-y. It's a hypnosis workshop, and we're going to do these 5 techniques to make you fearless, make you love yourself, do this. Like, do you think there's a formula out there that would help people just walk out of that workshop just being happier, more effective human beings? So not customized to the person, but just generalized kind of things that we could help all humans do.
I'm sure you could motivate a group and have them come out of there and be more successful than they would have been before they went to the program. But what I prefer to do is to work with them one-on-one. And your example of the fellow that didn't, he's blocked because he subconsciously thinks if I'm more successful than my father, then that would be a bad thing, and so he'll sabotage himself. So with that, I mean that's just a simple matter of hypnosis and in Fritz Perl's chair therapy, and have that conversation with Dad. And I would bet that 99 times out of 100, Dad says, "Hey, go for it, Junior. You don't have to worry about me. As a matter of fact, I'm up up here looking down on you and cheering you on." And they have that conversation, and boom, that block is removed. It's funny with group hypnosis, it's just not as effective as one-on-one.
Agreed.
You have people that we call them motel hoppers, and they come in and they rent out the Holiday Inn, and in the morning they do the smoking cessation, and then in the afternoon they do the weight loss, and they charge just a little bit of money, and some of the people do quit smoking and lose weight, but the success rate is far below what you can get with an individual
Absolutely
session, because everybody's motivated differently, and you can't address that when you can't address it as effectively in a group session. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, Yeah, it's one of those things when you're doing motivational speaking, it's awfully nice to get a measurement how the company is doing before and after your talk. And if they get a good ROI, then they'll pay whatever your fee is to come in there and work with them again. But yeah, I like doing group sessions. They are a heck of a lot of fun. But if I'm being honest, they certainly are not as effective as one-on-one coaching and hypnosis.
Yeah. So here I'll give you an example of one of those because I'm still playing around with it.
Huh?
Like a useful kind of group hypnosis to me is exploring the fear that stops you from living your full life.
Mm-hmm.
And that one you can, because it's an individual journey
Mm-hmm.
for people. So you're not doing any therapeutic. You're just getting them to get a better understanding. It's like, oh my God, yeah, my biggest fear is being judged. And they really got a good sense of that. And they come out of that saying, oh, I know what it is. For me, it's judgment or someone else need to be liked, which is similar but different. And so something like that's quite useful, knowing what your fear is. Because once you know it, you can go figure out how you want to sort it out, which could be go see Sean, or it could be I'm going to take a long walk. So as we move along, Sean, here is my, before we end the show, where I really want to end it is very much old school hypnosis, where people like hat pins and auditorium. So we're going to go there before we end. But before we get there, in medicine, there has been leaps and bounds in understanding of medication and the pathways in the brain and all that stuff. Have there been advances in hypnosis, or is this a human ability condition that we're basically doing the same things we were doing 50 years ago, or are the people on the cutting edge extending the field of hypnosis?
Well, there's certainly a lot of research going on out there. But I think hypnosis's problem is not so much that people are not pushing the envelope and looking for other things that they can help people with. I think it's that it's terribly underutilized. It could be so useful for so many things, and people just don't know. I mean, they probably proved 30 years ago that hypnosis is extremely effective with IBS, with irritable bowel syndrome. That's probably 20, 30 years ago. But if you ask your average person with IBS, they have no idea that hypnosis could help them, even though it is terribly effective. So I think hypnosis's main problem is that it's not utilized enough. And the other problem that hypnosis has is that there are standards. Every physician went to medical school. I mean, there are standards. You can't even get a job cutting somebody's hair unless you have a
license. Yeah.
A license, right? You don't need a license to do hypnotherapy. And so anyone can call themselves a hypnotist. There are no standards. There's some advantages to that, but there are certainly some disadvantages to that. So that is probably hypnosis's second most serious problem. First, that it's underutilized, and second, that there are no standards.
And there's a third one, I think, and this was when when I did the course with you. By the way, if you're looking for someone to teach you hypnosis, Sean is a master, and it was just a very entertaining, fun, enlightening day of actually Sean teaching and us doing. It was more doing than anything else. So highly recommend it. But you spent a good bit of time at the beginning of our class talking about most people have a misconception of hypnosis. It's going to make you cluck like a chicken or look like a fool. And so debunking that stuff or addressing that stuff right at the beginning. But I think generally in society, there is this negative connotation with hypnosis. There's this like mild tacit acceptance. But I think if you look deep down, there's an issue there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all in what they see in the media, in the movies, and on television. It's well, since you're a hypnotist, you know that the majority of what you see on TV and the movies is bogus. So they can be you can understand completely how they could have these misconceptions.
Absolutely. And I think it's probably what we need to do is, this will be our mission, John, if we choose to accept this, is go commandeer somebody with an fMRI machine and the people on the neuroscience front, and help them understand the brain better with hypnosis. And I think that programs doing together to do some research, I think would be a great way. Because right now you can, anything with neuroscience, you're like a freaking god. It's like, really? Oh, wow, that's amazing. There's like total acceptance. And but I also think they're doing amazing work. And I think understanding what happens at the level of hypnosis with the latest fMRI machines and stuff would also kind of lend to its credibility and acceptance, would be the pathway to achieving what you talk about.
Well, the good thing is that there is actually, that work is going on right now. So I don't know what they've come up with yet, but they are actually using fMRIs right now to study trance and depth of trance and things like that. So it's
brilliant.
Coming, just not
superb. Fast. Okay, so last couple of questions. The placebo effect, is that self-hypnosis, or is another mechanism going on? Self-deception, self-hypnosis, or something else going on?
Well, it depends on your definition of hypnosis. You know?
Yeah.
and that's a very deep subject. But placebo, there's probably some placebo going on in hypnotherapy as well. Some people will come to you to lose weight, and because they've paid for a hypnotherapy session, they're going to be successful no matter what you do. So, we benefit from the placebo effect. It's not just medicine that benefits from that. I read something recently where they found a biological marker for people who are susceptible to placebo. And they also, and then another study, they found a biological marker, people who tend to be great hypnotic subjects. And so, but the one that excited the drug companies, of course, was the one about placebo. Oh, by the way, these two things are probably the same thing. Very close. So, but the drug companies were super excited because if you could eliminate people that are susceptible to the placebo effect from your drug trials, that'd be a cool thing, But yeah, so yeah, but is placebo hypnosis? I don't know. It may be, maybe hypnosis. It may just be wishful thinking. It may be, I don't know. But
it could be a scale. It could be a scale. Like wishful thinking could be the beginning of the hypnotic trance. Who knows? So here's the thing that really I do not understand whatsoever. You're doing these traditional trials are, there's two groups, and one group is going to get the active ingredient. The other group is going to get the placebo, and the third group is going to get nothing at all. So no drugs for you, and see what the difference is.
Right.
Typical kind of test. They've got a new test now where they have this other group, and they go, Sean, you 100% are getting a placebo.
Yeah.
It's not going to be active, and you still have positive benefits. It's a placebo, and it still helps you.
Yes, it will, definitely.
And if you are not sure whether it's active or not, because we're telling you it's real, that's a different thing. When I'm telling you it's a lie, this is a sugar pill. It's not going to help you at all. Take it anyway, and it helps. I'm not sure why that happens.
I don't know. I mean,
happens.
Certainly some of them are going, well, okay, he's trying to sell this really, really hard. So it probably is the real medicine.
All right. So take us down to the history of hypnosis, like some of the earlier work done on vaudeville shows and stuff, because that's all fascinating stuff.
Oh, yeah. The hat pin through the arm. Yeah. And they tell them, anesthetize the client and just say, you won't feel this. You won't feel any pain. And then they put the hat pin through the person's arm. They'd hold a lighter or a lit match underneath somebody's ham. And the problem with that is, of course, yes, you can anesthetize somebody with hypnosis, but that doesn't mean that you're not injuring them with that or cooking their flesh with that match.
So I'm going to interrupt you there just for a second, because it was when you told me the story, there was one other thing that was the fascinating part. Not feeling the pain that happened. It's like, that's a nice parlor trick. The part that freaked me out was this, is that the hypnotist tells the person there's going to be two holes in your skin. Only the right one will bleed.
Mm-hmm.
and only the right one bled.
Yes.
And
Well, that's the one. That's the one that I had always been taught, but I only recently got to test that. And we had a physician with some lancets and 2 volunteers. And yes, we did that. We had the first volunteer, the left hole will bleed, the right hole will stop. And that's what happened. The second one, we did it exactly the opposite, and it worked. And yeah, you can, and I've actually seen it with my own 2 eyes. You can stop capillary bleeding with hypnosis, and that was pretty cool.
so just hold out for a second. There is so in computers, what we're using right now to do this beautiful interview
Mhm.
is the software we're using is StreamYard, and it's a top layer of everything. And
Mm.
underneath that is the OS, which is Windows in my case. Underneath that is the machine language.
Mhm.
And underneath that is the BIOS that hooks up the mouse and the mic and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So interesting things are happening at the machine level to control this magical thing. And we're just using the higher level that makes it easy for me to click the mouse and see you.
Right.
I think the same thing is true for human beings, is that there is a really powerful underlying operating system that we have the ability to go into a capillary and say, I don't want you to bleed, and I want you to bleed over there. That that conscious level of mind, we have no idea how to control it. Just like I'm using this software, all I know is I can click the end broadcast button and it's going to stop broadcasting,
Mhm.
but I have no idea what's happening underneath to make it happen. And I think that's where hypnosis and neuroscience could meet at some point, where we can go down into the basic. So you got DNA on the biological side, but I think you got an operating system that's deeper. That once we start getting, there is a cancerous lump in this location, starve it of blood. Who knows what the future is? But fascinating stuff. Like you'll bleed on this side versus the other.
Mhm. Well, it's an interesting analogy. Yeah, I mean, it could be very much very close to what's actually happening. Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I've not witnessed this, but I've heard of it. Maybe you've got more experience on this or in your research. Is that people that have multiple personalities
Mhm.
sometimes can have a change of eye color or allergies that are in one versus the other? That
I've
there's a
heard-
different. Have you heard of this?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
So
They
that,
also can be highly hypnotizable.
yeah, and so that leads to this the theory of there's an underlying operating system
Uh-huh.
that the upper level of personality, which is like this application we're using, you've got like, John, who is a kindly grandfatherly figure, and this other personality is like a biker, mean, horrible person, is at the top. But underneath that fundamental architecture just changes and says, okay,
Mhm.
the biker's allergic to this, and grandpa is not. So fascinating things.
Yeah.
Sean, we had a great conversation. What's a question for me? I've been interrogating you. Do you have a question for me?
Well, let's see. So you're still in Maryland now?
No. Sold the house 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Got rid of the possession. Started traveling the world.
Uh-huh.
And my dad's freaking out. When are you going to settle down? Where are you going to settle down? And I said, wherever I fall in love is where I'll settle down. So met this amazing woman in Toronto, which is my old hometown, and getting married on August 18th.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you. So
That's
is there a
great.
question that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
No, I don't think so. I think, and I really liked your questions, and you've given me some stuff to think about, particularly the one about the fractionation. So I'm going to play. I'm going to play with that. But no, I think no, I really enjoyed our conversation. It was great catching up with you, and congratulations on the marriage and upcoming marriage. And yeah,
Cool. Stay online with me as we end this, and we'll chat in a second. If you enjoyed this episode, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. And if you're looking for more tools, go to my website at nolimitselling.com. I've got a free mind training course there that's going to teach you some insights from the world of neuro-linguistic programming, and that is the fastest way to get better results.